I have the honor of introducing our speaker today. This minister of today has been an avid, enthusiastic student of science of mind since 1992, so it's been a while. Graduated last year from our own, what was our School of Spiritual Leadership, with a master's degree also in consciousness studies, and is now a licensed minister and works as the associate minister down in Sarasota. She's literally, just involved in service in everything she does. That seems to be what her life is. So committed to service. She is a practitioner and associate minister, of course, down in Sarasota. But she also has been on the board of trustees, has taught and been the youth or teen director, has been a class facilitator, a workshop leader, a Sunday presider, a guest speaker, and helps with administrative duties too. So service seems to be the truth of this woman. Her mission is to live life from the inside out. And this is a quote: "I courageously awaken myself and others to the creative and authentic expression of spirit from within." I love it. One more thing, in her spare time, she also owns a real estate agency. So, sits around being bored half the time, I think. And of personal interest to me, I was on her practitioner panel a few years back. So I got skin in this game too. I am thrilled to introduce to you Reverend Theresa Fieberts.
Am I on? Am I on? Okay. Well, so really I owe it to Barley, right? Because she was on my prac panel, and if I had to say that a few times, pass my prac panel, I wouldn't even be here. So, thank you, Barley. I kind of feel like, I don't even need to say anything, because the prayer, the reading that you did, Susan, the music, it's all kind of saying what I'm saying, so you've really already heard it all. But last Sunday was Easter, and I spoke in Sarasota, and what I want to do is I took the focus of the disciples and their experience of the resurrection of their teacher, the crucifixion and the resurrection of their teacher. And I want that story to be our story, because I believe that it is. I believe that's our story, and so I want to take a deeper look with you today, so you're kind of getting the sequel from last week. But when we think about the resurrection, I wasn't there. I don't really know what happened. I don't think any of you were there, at least not consciously, that you're consciously remembering being there. So we don't really know. We do the best that we can at imagining, but what we do know is something really powerful happened, right? Something magnificent did happen. Did happen. So much so that a movement was started. So much so that disciples' lives were changed in a way that started a movement that we still have today, right? Christianity. Something happened that was so powerful that these people had fire in the belly. They had fire in the belly that they couldn't put out, that they had to be sharing with everyone. And so we're going to talk about what that was. And Houston Smith, I took a lot of this from Houston Smith's book, World Religions. That book, probably most of you are familiar with that book. That book sold over 300 million copies. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? Powerful stuff. So he talks about this, though, specifically about the process of the disciples, what the disciples went through. And he said that they weren't terribly dynamic people before this happened. They weren't uber successful, but they became that. Like suddenly they were transformed in a way that they were living large. They were living life the way we all want to live life, right? It's something we all want. We want to be on top of our game. We want to be living our lives like we own it, like it's just a big flow, right? And we're successful in every aspect of life. Well, he says this is what happened for these people. So we want to look at why, how did that happen for them? Because it could happen for us then, right? Because they didn't have anything we don't have. There wasn't anything special about them. They didn't possess anything that we don't have. But something lit the fuse. Something lit the fuse. We all have that light. We've talked about it already this morning. We've sung about it. You spoke about it. We have that light. We have that something already in us. Albeit some of us are more aware of it than other people. Right? But we all have it. We all have a spark. We call it a divine spark. I like to think of it as an urge. You know, maybe an urge with a capital U. We have this urge inside of us. We all know truth. We all know truth. We all know at some level inside of us that we are worthy. We know we're worthy. We know there's an inherent worth within us. We know we are of value. And we know what we're here to do. We all know this. But we shy away from it. For some reason, we shy away from it. But that something in us, I want to say it's a something with a capital S, that something in us wants to be expressed. It doesn't want to be ignored. It wants to live big. We want to shine our lights. It's there for us. So today I suggest that we should shine our lights, that we should fan this flame. And I know I shouldn't should on myself, but I believe this. I believe it really strongly. So I'm going to use the should word. Life's a gift, and I know for myself I want to accept that gift, and I want to do everything I can with it. Express it every way that I can. Experience it every way that I can. I want to make the most of what I've been given. I expect you do too? Okay. So Ernest Holmes tells us that the soul is the one triumphant, indestructible, unconquerable thing that we possess, each one of us. And it's shot from the invisible into this experience. Constitutes our greatest reality. But he says, why wait? Why wait for physical death to enjoy and experience your immortal being? Do not prepare to die. Prepare to live. Whether you're 10 years old or 100 years old, I don't see anybody in those two categories, there is no death. It is impossible for you to die. Best line here, stop trying to die and learn to live. Right? Stop trying to die and learn to live. It doesn't matter whatever happened in the resurrection, whatever happened, the disciples had an experience. So Jesus, he didn't simply, and this is Houston Smith saying, you know, he didn't simply resume his former body, his former physical body. But what's clear is the disciples had an experience of him being different, right? They saw him in a new way. They experienced him in a new way, namely as having qualities of God. So he could now be known anywhere, at any time, not just within physical proximity. This is really important. Yeah, not just in physical proximity. I see Susan here, right? I see Dennis, I see Barley. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about everywhere present, all the time, no matter where you are, he's with you. Science of Mind teaches this, right? That God is life in, as, and through us. All the time, everywhere we are, no matter what we're doing, it's right there. It's right there within us, right? And Ernest Holmes talks about death as a shifting scene. Those are the words he uses. Death is a shifting scene. It's the moving from one place to another. It's fluid. So Houston Smith in this book, World Religions, speculates on what happened for the disciples. And he said that it's an internal change that they went through. An internal change that they all went through. And so they were getting in touch with this mystery of death. You know, we see it as a mystery. We don't know, right? And they didn't know. But it's important for us to know. I think it's a matter of life or death for us to understand this concept of immortality. So many people, myself included, there was a former Theresa that lived life on autopilot. So many of us live on autopilot. We go about our day kind of by rote, right? Thomas Merton has this beautiful poem, and one line I've pulled out of it, and I've changed the first word. But he's talking about there's this this thing in us, right? That he says now sleeps in your paper flesh, like dynamite. Think about that, imagine that. There's this thing in this paper flesh that's kind of volatile, right? With dynamite. Yeah. That's what's in us. The Science of Mind is a teaching of panentheism. You've heard that word, you know, panentheism. So panentheism is that God is immanent, in me, now, present, now. I loved you said in the papers that you hold. Everywhere present, now. And God is also in the unseen. God is also in the possibilities, in what we don't yet see in life. God is transcendent, above, beyond. It is both. And that's what we teach in Science of Mind, that it is both. Panentheism maintains that the universe is a whole system, all of it, where intelligence, purpose, meaning, and order is all present, fully present, at every point. At every point. Right? Fully present, like a hologram. Not part of it. When we say we're part of God, not really. It's fully here. It's fully present. But the key, the kicker is we're left to find that out for ourselves, to discover it for ourselves. God doesn't force itself upon us. It doesn't dominate our lives, but there's that urge. There's that urge in us. And we all know, I know you know what I'm talking about. So Ernest Holmes tells us again, this life within, maybe I didn't send that one to you. Oh, that one. It's next. This is what Ernest Holmes said. This life within you, being God, did not begin and it cannot end. Hence, you are immortal and eternal. That is, you can never be less. You can never be less, but must be more of yourself. Don't you love that? You can never be less than you are right here and right now. You can only be more. As life within you unfolds through your experience, through your gathering of knowledge and your accumulating of wisdom, we grow, you know? We're part of evolution. And not expressing life is when we hold back from life, right? And we do that. We do it to ourselves. We hold back from life, and we do it every time we think we're unworthy, when we're not good enough, when we think, who am I to get up here and speak wisdom? Who am I to address the good people in Tampa? Who am I to do that? You're holding back. You're not allowing spirit to have expression in, as, and through. Not becoming more. We hold back when we don't even try things because we're fearful of failure. Lots of people do that, right? You don't even go into ministerial school because what if I fail? And those failures are public when you make them as a minister. You're going to make a mistake up here in front of you. So what holds you back from being that very best expression of spirit? Houston Smith says there's three things that hold all of us back and held the disciples back until they had this, instantaneous combustion, and it just all poured forth from them, because he said it was just like that. It was just happened for them. So here's what happened. They let go of fear, guilt, and ego. Now we're going to talk about those. Fear, guilt, and ego. He said the disciples were suddenly lifted from the constraints of those three burdens, that they woke. Everything was real. Suddenly, they knew it. They had it all, right? That dynamite that Merton was talking about, that's what that is. That's dynamite. So the first one, fear. He said fear of all things, but especially fear of death. Fear around death. Now, that's good. Faith and immortality is necessary. Faith and immortality is necessary to a real healing, I love this, of the inferiority complex or fear. Our faith in life must be so great that in our imagination it bridges the gulf between what we call death, where it's dissolved. That idea of death is dissolved. And that those ideas of unworthiness, of I'm not good enough, that inferiority complex is dissolved. And it's dissolved when we know who we are. And it's dissolved when we know there's not death. There's not an end to life. There's not failure. That we don't have to hold that fear, all those fears that slow us down. Years ago, seems like a lifetime ago, really, I was broken. My heart was broken. My mind wasn't functioning as well as it could. I was sad. I was angry. I saw lack and limitation everywhere I looked. In my own house, I was a victim. I was a victim of all kinds of consequences, right, in my mind. I was the living dead, but not in that cool vampire way, not in that way. But in the empty, painful, oh my God, this is eternity, I will feel like this. That kind of way. That's why I say this is uber important. This is life or death. Because we live that way, don't we? We live like it's death sometimes. So I didn't yet understand that my life is eternal. And that there are no constraints above me, around me. There's only a support underneath me, and that urge within me. So, we can learn, I think, from the disciples and what they experienced, because their experience was so profound that they were raised up by their witnessing. They knew that they knew that they knew that they knew, right? They knew there wasn't death. They knew that because of whatever they experienced with Jesus. But they were liberated by it. Right then, they were liberated by it. They had an experience. Buddhists use the word resurrection. And for Buddhists, the word resurrection means when the teachings of the Buddha or your master, your teacher, when the teachings come alive in you. Isn't that great? That's what resurrection is. When the teachings are so alive within the student. Well, that's what happened with the disciples, right? And I would imagine that everyone in here has had some sort of a resurrection. Some sort of an awakening from a dark night of the soul. Or a healing, a physical healing. Something like that, right? A demonstration from prayer. Something that was so powerful and profound for you that you know that you know that you know that you know, and nobody can tell you anything different, right? They can't convince you that it didn't happen the way you know that it happened for you. Well, that's what we're talking about. And when we have that experience, when we have that kind of knowing, we need to step into it with both feet. We need to own that and live from the power that gives us. because that releases the inferiority complex. That releases that idea that somehow I don't deserve life, that I'm not worthy of greatness. When you have those kinds of experiences, it eliminates the idea that I can't be a leader, that I can't shine. Because this is something extraordinary happened. And when we think that way, then we can think, well, who am I not? Who am I not to have this grand experience of life? I mean, really, if we are the incarnation of the One, like you profess in your declaration, right? Then who are we to deny life's full expression? It's our responsibility. Right? It's really our responsibility in a joyful way. I don't know, oh my God, I have to let life have a great experience through me. Not in that kind of a way, Not in that kind of a way. Ernest Holmes says, life unfolds through our experience. So I heard it said this way, we need to show God a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah? Right? We need to show God a good time. That's like our job. So we release fear. That was the burden number one. Burden number two is guilt. Is guilt. Now, Ernest Holmes also speaks a little bit to this. But we can't rise into our power when we're weighed down by guilt. He said, man is not only a center of God's consciousness, he is an immortal being, forever expanding, forever spiraling upward, forever growing in spiritual stature. And not some men, and I add women, but all of us are immortal. For everyone will finally overcome or transcend any misuse of law which he or she has made in ignorance. That's all it is. When we make a misstep, that's all it is. There's a momentary lapse of ignorance, right? It's just a momentary thing. So the disciples must have had some guilt, right? I mean, no, they let their teacher be crucified and executed and humiliated in such a public way. And oy vey, the heaviness of that, the pain of that. That's big, right? They had to let it go. They had to let it go so they too could transcend into this new awareness. Well, we make mistakes. We make mistakes. We stumble, we have our feelings hurt, and so we say something back that's unkind. Or we're in a hurry and we're not paying attention, we cut somebody off in traffic. We do these things. The biggest one is what we do to ourselves by not living up to our full potential, by not following our dreams, by not letting life live fully, freely through us. It's the biggest one. So what happens when we do those things? Because we do them. We have to be gentle. We have to be gentle with ourselves. And just a great way to do that is just ask, is this life-giving? Is this affirming? Does this feel heavy? Does this feel light? Just check in. Just check in. And of course, I'm not saying don't be responsible if we need to make amends. So absolutely. Make amends, but move on. Move on. Don't carry it for the next 10, 20 years. Right? So, intolerable burden number 3 is the ego. And I say egocentric, small-minded thinking and self-importance. There's kind of 2 facets of this, I think. Because I don't think ego's completely bad. Ego makes what makes you get up and get on the cushion in the morning, like Randy said, you know, he has his prayer stuff in the morning. Well, that's what your ego says, get up and do that. Something has to remind you to get up and do that this is important. So it's not all bad, I don't think. But small-minded thinking, that inferiority complex kind of thinking, yeah. Or bloated, you know, I'm so important, nobody else is, that kind of thinking. Yeah, we can let those go. So Ernest Holmes talks about this a little bit. He says, Again, I mean, we're just hammering in this immortal stuff, right? People are immortal, not because they earn it, because they've paid some kind of heavenly price. You know, I love this, paying for it by self-denial. You know, it's not that. They are immortal because they are made of immortal stuff. Very scientific there. They're made of immortal stuff, immortal stuff. And it's all people. And not because they're Christian, Jews, or pagans, or because they believed a certain philosophy, or said the prayer right. It's not because of that. It's because we're divine. All of us. He says, humanity is divinity wearing a mask. Isn't that great? Yeah, humanity is divinity wearing a mask. Humanity is wearing the mask of the divine. We're it. We're it, people. We're it. We're it. And when I get that I'm it, then it's really easy to tag and go, you're it. Tag, you're it. Tag, you're it. Right? I got to know it for myself first. Do you know it for yourself? Yes. All right. All right. I want you to look at somebody. Look at somebody next to you and tell them to take off the mask and be who you came here to be. Take off the mask. Be who you came here to be. You be it. Right? Take off the mask. Be who you came here to be. Yes. All y'all. Yeah. Because we don't earn salvation. We have it now. We're living life now. We're living life now. So that small self, not the self with the capital S, that small self, needs to go away. Needs to go away. So the Christ self, the true self, the one with the capital S, is the one that we move forward with. And that's the one that we see all our neighbors with. Yeah, it's hugely important. And the ancients told us that. Our modern day mystics tell us that. Holmes told us that. But the root cause of all, practitioners, you know this, practitioner students, you know this, root cause of all our problems are separation. The thought that we're separated from God somehow. We're separated from others somehow, and we're not. It isn't true. So that's the good news. It's the greatest news. And the disciples were talking about the good news, right? So they were out there sharing the good news with people, but it wasn't the words they were using. It was how their lives had transformed. How their lives had transformed because they let go of fear. They let go of guilt. They let go of that small thinking, that self-absorbed ego. They let go of it, right? And that was the good news that they were sharing. And their lives changed, and they were successful, dynamic people. So how do we do that? How does Suncoast do that? How do you get the message out? Fill these seats, buzz out these walls. By being that disciple, right? Disciple does not mean just student. Disciple also means teacher. So walk your talk. Walk your talk. Be the demonstration out there in the world. And first, for yourself, experiment. Prove this teaching to yourself so you are so on fire that you can't help but share it with people, right? So, this is how this teaching transforms lives. I have a little video here. We're not going to have sound on it because I'm going to walk you through this video. This is a video of the making of a movement. Some of you may have seen it. The making of a movement. And it starts with one person. I'll wait till it gets up. But we all can do this. So we're going to place our attention, not on Derek Fieberts here, but up here. We have one person starting a movement. Let's say that's Reverend Lane. She's up in North Carolina right now doing it. There she is. All right. And somebody's going to join her, right? Somebody's going to join her. Who's that going to be?
Becky.
Oh, okay. All right. And see, watch what happens. Because the leaders letting the next person do their thing, right? They're doing their thing. And that's what we do in community, right? We've got the leader, but we have risk takers that are the second and third people. Let's see if anybody else gets up here and starts, these guys are having a good time. And they're not worried about what else is going on. Look at Lane go, baby. And Becky, somebody's joining them. Oh, look what's happening. Oh my God, you better hurry up. You better hurry up and get in there. Oh my gosh, because then you're left behind. Look at that. Look how fast it's happening. This is 3 minutes. 3 minutes making a movement. 3 minutes. Teamwork. This is you. This is you. This is the disciples at the hippie fest, right? Here they are. See, there's Mary, there's Mark. There they are. All right. I encourage you to let your light shine. It's big, it's beautiful, it's bright, it's brilliant. All right. I've spoken a little long, so I'm going to let you go. But I'm excited about this teaching, and I'm excited about who we are, and I'm excited for Suncoast CSL. Yeah. Thanks for having me.